evening, everybody. Good night, or no, good evening, I think is what you say when you say hello.
Talking Dirty
with Maestro.
Not just numbers,
Not just stats.
it's about what they mean.
I'm going to send to you the information.
Talking Dirty.
Hello, welcome to Talking Dirty with your boo. Me. There is a trend this season in SimWorld that is really catching my attention more than I want it to. And that is the number of teams who are becoming single player dominant. Now, I'm going to give mad credit to a couple of teams later, but these teams kind of surprise me only because their coaches are so well versed with patterns, with statistics, knowing how it plays out on the floor, on court management, scheming up offenses, scheming up defenses, having a plan, sticking to that plan, just top shelf ability. And I'm going to speak directly to a performance last night that showed you how lopsided things can get, how fast they can get that lopsided. And that was a performance of the Gulf Coast lockdown against the Yacht Club and having a 3-point first quarter. Now, that almost seems impossible with a team like that. And what makes it even more amazing, if Gulf Coast would have played their typical first quarter, they might have had an opportunity to win the game. Yes, they lost 86-55. Fine. But look at how they got there after being down 17 after the first 8 minutes. When you have a team that skilled, that talented, that able to put together a game the way they did, and also put themselves in position to still have a chance. And oh, by the way, that was after it was a 17-point difference in the first quarter. It was a 15-point difference in the third quarter. Now, if there is not any sort of semblance of how paradoxically close this league is, that should tell you right there. And I know 86-55 doesn't feel like it was a close game. And in many ways, if you watch the game, the eye test tells you it was not. But it didn't feel as big as 31 points. Those two quarters made that big of a difference. And not being able to overlook the poor performances in the first quarter and the third quarter, the one real thing that you have to say about Gulf Coast lockdown is they were taking the shots. They were not making the shots. And I think overlooked in the entirety of this conversation is the strength of the Yacht Club's defense, how they were able to place themselves in a position to be such a significant impediment to Gulf Coast. So we can talk about that epically bad performance if you want, but it takes two, one team to do it and one team to help the other team do it. And the Yacht Club definitely did that. And the Yacht Club played completely consistent throughout the night, up to and including how they were able to sort of leverage themselves in the last quarter to just maintain and get the win. Smart basketball. Now, for some people, it looked like they were going overboard. I don't really see it that way, especially when you look at the fact that they actually lost the fourth quarter 18-14, which means they were just doing what they were doing. Now, yes, they were doing it in a certain way, but you got to stop them, right? The whole key is you have to stop them. But that one player dominant game is what's coming back to bite a lot of teams in particular. And if there is no other talk than of a game of the year, Kai Killen should definitely get that by scoring 32 of his team's points, which means he scored, you guessed it, more than half of his team points, trying to make an effort, not giving up throughout the game. And that tells you what type of person he is. Notice I said person, not player. In a situation where you were so overwrought, so overburned, he scored those points. Kai did with the effort of being in the game. And that says something about him. And it says something about how he accepts his coaching. Well done, you. We're going to talk more about this trend in the second half here. So, let's say.
Thank you for listening to the Maestro. Want to get involved? Bring it.
Drop in discord.gg/SimWorld Hoops.
If you have the brain, join as a coach. If you have the game,
join as a player.
see the game,
Be
be the
the
game.
game.
Now, back to the Maestro.
Sorry. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back. And welcome back to Talking Dirty with your boy. So the most handsome man in SimWorld, B-Ron, wrote an article that got a lot of people turned sideways. And we had a discussion about it during the game. And I really want to continue that discussion, but the game was actually really good. So, we decided to do our job, which made management happy because we want management happy, right? The non-US teams, B-Ron feels as though they're not quite ready for prime time yet. And there was an argument going back and forth about that. Everyone knows the thread. I'm not going to relitigate the thread itself, but I want to talk about a perspective on that thread that sort of tells us part of how two things can be true at the same time. The OGs get stunned by APAC. And why do we say stunned? Look at a team that is considered one of the best teams in the league with only now 3 losses, and look at who those 3 losses are to and how those 3 losses came about. A little surprising in some of the cases, and sort of surprising in other cases, and then very surprising in this case. So if you say the blemish on your season happens to be 3 unsuspected losses, that speaks pretty well of you, right? And what Coach Dodge is doing there. Then we look up ahead at how we see in the case of SimWorld Europe gets a pretty solid win over Beast of the East. And though it was thought Beast of the East would have been considered the favorite for a lot of different reasons, it was really interesting that there was still not a surprise that Europe was able to take the win over them in the fashion that they did. Really solid basketball throughout the game, winning the first quarter, losing the next 2 quarters, but then winning the fourth quarter as they did when they got into the same mode of play that they did in the first quarter of the game. And Run DMV, though not the Run DMV we hoped they would be, they actually did get a win over SimWorld Africa. But the win was, they had to really outplay them in the fourth quarter. And Run DMV did what they needed to do to get the win. But here we have a non-US continental team, I'll say it that way, that could have very easily had a lost, could have won last night. Now, B-Ron's thought and B-Ron's idea about the European teams not being ready because of what he's seeing is quite legit, because what? We see the teams, some of them get close, they go for a good run, and then they don't quite make it at the end. How a lot of people are saying they seem to be beating teams of quality. Again, 2 things can be true at the same time. Circumspectly, the idea of the U.S. continental team's dominance isn't quite what we thought it would be, whereas the non-continental U.S. teams are making better and better and better showings, not just on the individual level, but on the team level as they're moving forward. So what does that tell you? That tells you that there is definitely a process and definitely something in place, not just about SimWorld itself, where parity is key, where any given night, any team can win. the globalization of the game, how it's starting to work, how teams are starting to play. Yes, there are U.S. players on some of the non-continental teams. I get that. But to deny the fact that there is a cultural expectation of what the teams do because of what they have done would be not quite wise to overlook. And then overall, in that particular case, what are we seeing? A lot of the game becoming more of a global style game with the lack of many different things that marked basketball in its earlier years and how the game has transitioned to what it is now. And one of those things being a lack of defense, one of those things being a lack of consistent defense. And the teams who tend to play their offense off of their defense have now proven themselves to be in many ways the better teams. The movement of a lot of the European and non-US continental teams with their attribution to other sports such as soccer and things like that are the same dominance we're seeing with US teams who have players whose second sports are soccer or volleyball. Those other sports are making a difference. And again, adding to that homogenistic globalization of the game where things are now getting closer and closer and closer and closer and closer, which is great because it makes the basketball more fun. What do you think about it? How do you think it is? Yeah, you can tell B-Ron I told him he was right. Other than that, you know what's up. I'll let give your boy a shout. Let's see what's up. We'll catch you at a certain point. Maybe we can have. I'm sorry, I can't stop laughing now. We can talk about it. All right. And don't forget, no matter what you do, never let John Wick borrow your bicycle.
Like, I need to talk to somebody.
Thank you for listening to Maestro.
Thank you again for checking out Maestro. Drop a tag below and give us a piece of your mind. See you next time.
Well, thank you for your time. Have a wonderful day.